Meeting will come to order at 1:08 p.m. Do we have new personages?
Sure, I will. I was going to do it part of the planning department report, but we'll start off.
Please.
I am pleased to introduce Emmy Terrio, who is our new community development director.
I'm sorry, would you say the name again?
Emmy Terrio.
Ann Terriot.
Emmy.
Emmy.
Yeah.
T-H-E-R-I-O-T?
IAULT, but you were close.
Okay.
Well,
Well, there's a Terriot family, and that's why I was wondering.
Well, they don't know how to spell their name, but that's okay.
Yes, so she started Wednesday of last week and has taken over and will be our new full-time community development director.
Great.
On the other half of that, sad news, Zuzi will be leaving us and her last day is tomorrow. So
No.
yes, she's taken a position with the city of Manteca. So we bid her farewell and all of...
Well, I hope they're paying you at least twice, because why would you live there? We will miss you terribly, Susie.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, I've had her all of 1 week, so.
And she's brilliant and wonderful. So you're going to have a hiring process to replace
I think we're going to
Susie's
do a
position?
temp for a while and see what happens next. Anyway, but thank you for the warm welcome, and I'm excited to work with you folks. I was very much involved with the Public Art Committee in the city of Emeryville and helped them
great.
get their state designation as a cultural arts district, and that came with a good bit of money for projects in town.
Ooh, you know something we don't know.
So anyway, so we can talk more as we go forward and see what exciting things we can do. I'm a big believer in public art, as I was mentioning earlier, that you've heard of STEAM education, where STEM is the original of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. You add the A in there for STEAM with art.
STEAM, yes.
And there's a lot of folks that are in the biotech community and AI community, et cetera, that are firm believers in having artwork on employment campuses and this sort of thing, because it energizes the employees to think creatively and come to different ideas and innovations that they wouldn't have if they didn't have that kind of creative atmosphere to work in. So
Wonderful.
excited about this committee and working with you folks.
Great. So roll call, obviously Barbara is not here. Lars?
Here.
Jeff?
Here.
Robert? And do we have minutes here we need to approve?
Yes, there's minutes from November 12th, which was your last meeting.
Does anybody have any comment on those minutes?
I have a comment on the utility box. We had voted to continue it to the next meeting, which is this one, to find out how many utility boxes are in the city limits.
And we know that. And I can report on that.
Okay,
But I have a broader report on the subject to give.
Okay, so I'm not suggesting that the minutes need to be edited or revised. I'm just saying that we didn't have anything on the agenda today about the utility boxes. I know you mentioned.
We actually do
Bringing it in.
obliquely with this storm drain artwork topic.
Yeah, okay.
And I'll bring it up then.
All right, sounds good.
Anybody want to move approval of the minutes?
Yeah, I so move.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Approved. So comments from the public on items not on the agenda. Gregory, do you want to jump in here? Since we didn't put the opening event for the NedCon piece on the agenda,
No, it's on the agenda.
it is?
5B.
Oh, I'm
Sebastopol
sorry,
Spire.
Sebastopol Spire. Pardon me. We will come to that then.
And
I'm
we
going
didn't,
to,
city staff did not receive any comments from the public for items not on the agenda.
Okay. I'm going to suggest that we bypass item A until next meeting, as Barbara isn't here. And I do not wish to continue as chair, but we may have a new member depending on whether city council goes through that process. But there is, as I understand it, one application for our one open
Oh,
seat.
nice.
And so we might have 5, which would seem to me a better time to talk about chair and vice chair positions. Does anybody have a different thought about that topic? If we can,
Sure. So we'll move the vice chair and chair selection to your next scheduled meeting.
thank you. So, Gregory, Sebastopol Spire.
We're all business here. Yes.
Well, that way you, nobody's there, but the recording wants to have your voice on it.
Basically, I want to know how, should have the green button. How do you normally make your invites? That's why I'm here today. Because we could send that out, and if you needed some help, graphics or something like this.
Sure. So I would say if you have any language as far as the invite goes, you can send it to me, and then any graphics or any template basically that you have, we can take a look at it. And then as far as the invite goes, we can at least put it on as a news article on the city's website. And then I believe the Public Arts Committee does have kind of an email list of people that are with other projects and stuff like that we can send that out to as part of it. And then any other promotions that you do, usually if there's a Facebook page or something like that that's dedicated to these types of things, if they tag the city, our community outreach folks can accept that, and then it's publicized that way.
Okay. So email, well, Susie will be,
You can email if it's either today or tomorrow to Zuzi, and you can just copy me on it, or you can send it directly to me. I think, Greg, you have my email address. So,
yeah.
and then I can forward it on to the committee to see if they have any modifications or changes, and then we can get that set up and get it out to the rest of.
And will staff at the
community.
time do a press release and make sure the Sebastopol Times puts it in there, what's going on this week, and potentially something in the PD?
I can at least send it out to the Sebastopol Times. As far as the PD, there is a cost associated with that, and we'll have to see how large the article is. But at least anything we can post on the city's website, and we can link to that. So at least there's something out there.
I wanted to ask a question about the Spire. The last time I went and took some friends, we parked at the back of the parking lot of, that complex that's there. And of course, all those spaces are designated for those units, but we ignored that, parked there anyway, and went down that little path, which leads you right to the sculpture. Is that going to be an official path? What is the vision for where people would park for this event, or just to go and see the sculpture?
I don't believe there's any dedicated parking spaces allocated to that spire. That parking lot that you're mentioning is on private property, so the property owner would have, their rights to remove any folks that they feel are trespassing or not part of that parking space. There is, there is some street parking along Morris there. It's very limited. I realize that, but I don't believe there's any dedicated parking spaces for the Spire, and it's, unfortunately, there's not a city parking lot relatively close by, unlike, the sculpture garden and stuff like that, where there's 2 parking lots.
There was conversation about a bridge and trail. Is that
Correct.
bridge then going to be across the creek that flows east-west next to the city's facility there? on North Street?
It'll be close to the pump station that's just right down the street here.
Right.
That's
It'll
where,
bridge that little creek that
Correct.
flows into the Laguna
correct.
and connect a trail that comes all the way to here.
Yes, that's part of the AmeriCorps Trail project.
And it's shown in the plans. By the way, thanks for forwarding that
Yeah.
to us. The location for the bridge.
So can I just, as a point of order, I feel like there's a lot of interesting issues we can talk about. And Gregory and I had a conversation about, the tree trimming and all sorts of stuff about the site. And then there's an event we're planning. So these are not necessarily the same topic. I mean, they're related, but so we started with what graphics are we going to do for the invitation? Should we just kind of try and figure that part out and then have this bigger discussion about the site and some of its issues?
What was the date we chose?
May 3rd.
May 3rd.
3rd of May.
So I wanted to ask you, Greg, do you have any recommendations in terms of, since we're including, the Native community in this event, in terms of a timeline, in terms of initially getting out an invitation, whether it's digital and or a flyer, et cetera?
I think the sooner that we have a save the date and then an actual invite, or even if the invite is created now and it could be sent multiple times. So I just kind of feel like that's why I'm here. It needs to happen sooner than later to get on everybody's radar, for everybody to put that on their calendar to come.
So, Zuzi, if you weren't leaving after tomorrow, would you be doing that invitation? If you get materials from Gregory today, is there any chance you could do a rough draft of it that could be picked up after your departure?
I'm sure she has nothing else to do in this last couple of days, right?
Or could I suggest, if you were to send me a template of something that you've done in the past, maybe I could curtail it and then send it to help relieve the time strain?
And then as far as your comment about the Sebastopol Times or whatever, I mean, this is not our first opening, right?
Right.
So can we just
Second.
do what we did before, which I think included, we've done the calls which go out to all these different arts organizations and so on. Can we just send it to our media list? Which does not cost any money. It just,
Right.
it's a push of the button for the next Zuzi in the chair. Right? I mean,
Yeah, I think that would be acceptable and probably the easiest. Because once we have the invitation flyer situated and done, it's just getting it out to the correct channels of folks.
Okay.
Then we could just talk about the site thereafter. I mean, months going on and however I could help or not.
Well, do we want to put an item on our March agenda to get serious about the logistics of the opening? So we also have time in April meeting?
I think that's perfectly fine.
And we can talk about contacting the owner about parking and various logistical issues and signage to guide people there and stuff.
Sure.
Will we need any accessibility is a question of sorts. And the only way I could see this is, I don't know if somebody would donate, but perhaps there's material that could be laid from the highway down to that area to make it maybe a little bit more wheelchair handicap friendly on the west side of that. But I mean, that's a logistical, I'm not sure how that would work and who to talk to.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I think maybe it's something that we can work with I can speak to the engineering department who's also working on the AmeriCorps Trail project, because I don't want to put anything if
Yeah.
if the those two things kind of line up around the same time,
That'd be great.
because that time of the year is about when it starts to dry up over there. And if they're looking at starting to do construction, I think they wanted to start on that end first, because that's one of the more difficult areas, especially with getting ADA accessibility from the roadway on Highway 12 there down into the
'Cause then-
Laguna site there.
Because then you could park wherever and walk to get to a
Correct.
space,
Yeah.
which is
Mhm.
probably what it was designed to do to begin with.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so I can continue to work with the engineering department for kind of those logistical things.
But John, you're saying the AmeriCorps project, they're hoping to start this spring.
If all of the
Construction.
if all the permitting is complete by then, they are going through all of that right now during this time of year when there's no construction kind of allowed in that area. Or it's much more difficult to do, but by the time that it dries up, which is kind of that May, June, July time of year, that's kind of what we've been targeting, provided all the other steps fall into line as far as construction on the trail part, and then the entrance down from Highway 12 there, and then the bridge components and stuff like that. Because the bridge comes in basically kind of pre-assembled, or comes in as like an erector set essentially in a big old package that's I think likely will have staged at Public Works or something like that, and then they'll cart in those pieces and then assemble it on site and then throw it in.
Well, at the March meeting, we can probably have some more solid timeline
Sure.
from city services.
Okay.
Can I just want to kind of clarify again. So staff's going to send Greg a sample of an invitation that we've used in the past. And then you will feel free to do whatever you think might work well and send us a draft.
Perfect.
Okay, that sounds
Will
great.
do. Yeah. Great.
And, if it's the right way to get it done, I did have a graphic design business for 25 years and I still do InDesign. So I can pick up the project. What program are you composing in?
I don't know what we did in the past. I'm thinking of if we use one that was similar for the sculpture garden or even the Michael McGinnis flyer. I don't remember what those look like because Carrie was when Carrie was here. She, I think, handled those. So we'll look at that and then
Okay,
we'll send them a
I
couple
can
examples.
pick up all the elements and you could even come over to my place and we can do it together.
That sounds great. Yeah, I think the sooner that we get that out to share, and then we can do another rush, I guess.
Okay, well, why don't we do it that way? You're going to send him what we've done. You're going to figure out what pictures and text you'd like in it,
Then I'll come see
and
you.
send that stuff to me, and then we'll just get together and do it.
Perfect. Okay. Just one other note. I did talk to the owners at Sanborn who took interest. I'm trying to persuade them into the adopt a park,
Adopt a landscape.
adopt a landscape for that area, which I think would be a
Well-
perfect marriage.
Well, kind of logical.
So much so. And the fact that they expressed interest. So for whatever it's worth, I think that's important and should be noted. It would be nice if that were to work. Because as I even drove over here from Santa Rosa, I looked, and it's pretty marshy. It's pretty native-y. I don't know how many of those plants are actual native versus invasive. So again, that would require somebody who's got the arborist skills that I don't have. That part could use.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
Well,
they have-
Sanborn has some very good arborists on their staff. I know for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. So they could maybe help with that even.
Okay.
And then just one final note about the spire. I did reach, I think it was a request from our last meeting about there's an oak tree that's kind of in front and kind of covering the spire. I did reach out to Brent Reed with the Laguna Foundation. As far as what he would recommend, if it's, trimming or removal of that tree, he did say that trimming is probably the most logical, as it would kind of reduce the fire kind of concerns around that. Also providing some additional safety and whatnot with limbs potentially falling and, hurting folks that are looking at that piece. He did say removal could open a can of worms because a lot of the trees that are in that area are mitigation replantings from previous projects. So it could be more of an issue to do a full removal, but he did seem to agree that, kind of regular pruning around that one or multiple trees there to allow folks from the roadway to be able to see it, because I know it is kind of blocked by a little bit of vision from a couple of those trees there. So
That's why this started, to be honest. Ned had sent us out there with this, and I got poison oak. I thought it was a tree, but yeah, we did a lot of trimming of just dead branches. And then Brent had also said that the reason why those trees are a little stumped is because it's like 30 feet of clay. So for them to actually survive, it's kind of amazing. So I also would agree that don't want to try and get rid of anything that's shady, especially in the summertime.
absolutely.
Well, Greg, just briefly, at our last meeting, we discussed the visibility of the spire from the sidewalk and the street for that matter too, which I'm sure you're well aware of. And that's how we embarked on this discussion about the trees and can any be removed to allow for greater visibility, or branches, trimming, et cetera, like that. So considering that this is our east entry sculpture, that people are, supposed to really be able to see as they enter or exit the city limits, it would be great to be able to see it well.
Thank you, Gregory. So, Kendra, you're up. And just by the way, when you leave, those are your easels on the table back there. So obviously we need to discuss the opening event for the Bruce Johnson piece and when and what we're going to do. Do you and Tori have an idea about when you'd like to see that happen?
The green button. First of all, thank you. It's great to have an excuse to come in person to one of your meetings. And okay, thanks. Also, a big honor to have installed that piece just last week. That everything went smoothly, and it's wonderful to have that there. So thank you for all of the work you've all done behind the scenes to make that happen. Tori and I have talked about a opening of some sort, and we don't have. I think we'd like to put it back to the committee to what would be best for the visibility and public celebration, especially related to the NedCon opening, that would be good for the committee and for the city. We are pretty wide open in terms of schedule. We have a pretty good sized mailing list that has long, deep roots in Sonoma County that we would invite gladly to a celebration. Then we would have to figure out where everybody parks and all of that. But there's interest. There's definitely a lot of interest in showing up to celebrate this. And so we'd like to know how we can help support this, but don't have a lot of needs about it or in terms of timing or flavor.
Well, I mean, just as an opinion, a month before or at least a month after, so that we don't have those too close. So it could be the first weekend of April, which would be the 5th and 6th, or it could be the first weekend of June, which would be the 7th and 8th.
Both of those work for us. We've checked the calendar.
I have a thought that, and since we have representatives from both pieces here, how it would be received if they were both on the same day. And the only reason I bring that up is because we're going to have invitations out. We're going to have a group of people here already for Ned Kahn's piece. And those people might very well already be here in town. It's very walkable between the two pieces. So as far as parking goes, the parking could behoove both sites. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that as a possibility. I don't want certainly to feel like either artist or family is feeling like their toes are getting stepped on because, it's sandwiched with the other one. But I just had that idea and want to throw it out there.
Would you think, if we were going to do that, bracketing lunch as a break in between them, one from 11 to 12, one from 1 to 2, that kind of thing? Because, I don't think you want to have them essentially sequential, because getting all those people moved from one place to the other seems like a herding cats problem. Sure, jump in.
Come on up.
There's room. There's plenty of room.
Well, at least I know you.
I know.
Yeah, right. I will say that it was mentioned that it would take the thunder away from your dad, to be honest. That was how it was expressed to me. Ned thought it would be good to have two separate functions.
Okay.
Yeah, that was his request.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
Aw.
Do you have a thought on that?
That's important to hear and to know. We feel like we're an amazing company with Ned and his piece. And yeah, again, I could see it working either way, really. So if that's a feeling that Ned has expressed already, let's do it a month apart.
Well, I know that there was a close sense of brotherhood between the two of them, and Ned may be wanting to be overcautious about stepping on any toes of honoring your father. But if you see it differently, then I think you get to say.
Why
The
don't
question is, would we get a better crowd for both if we did them together, or would we do better if they were separate?
I think it was more about the herding of cats. It's too many.
Well, that's why I was thinking you say, okay, this one's over at lunch at noon, and we'll see you all at 1. Go have lunch, wander over there, we'll reform. This is not where I was thinking we would go, but I'm just looking through how we could organize the logistics of that if we were going to do.
Could it be more fun to have two separate?
Yeah, I think it's a great suggestion in a way, but these are two amazing world-class artists. So let's get two big events out of it.
Okay.
Yeah, just like really celebrate each one, and then the city, the committee, all that also gets these two good events.
Okay.
There is more weather risk with the beginning of April than with the beginning of June.
Is that near Father's Day?
June, Father's Day is the
Little
third
later.
Sunday of June.
Mhm.
Yeah, they can.
Well, I was looking at the first weekend of June. It's not likely to be real hot, but
Again, either one of those would be really fine with us. If it were April 5th is my dad's birthday.
wow.
I was going to propose
Oh,
April 5th,
April
actually.
5th.
It's exactly 1 month ahead of Ned's opening. And I know we pushed the Ned opening further weather-wise because that site itself
The site
definitely
needs,
needs, that needs to be considered. Whereas Bruce's site has a lot more, paved area around it, and
Yeah.
it's not going to be
Well,
quite
and
as
the birthday
at risk.
tie-in, I think, is wonderful.
The birthday's good. The weather might be funky, but people will still come.
Yes.
will.
At least our list will definitely still come. I'm also, upon thinking about it, realizing there's a Sonoma County Museum show proposed to open in June. And so giving that a little more space would probably be wise as well.
Okay?
So let's try
Let's
for
call it
April.
April 5th.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
So if you all are in a hurry to get invites out for May, sounds like we should
Well, we have enough time
get
to
an
do all
invitation
this.
started.
So would you also send the invitation that we used for the Michael McGinnis piece to Tori and Kendra,
Thanks.
who can
Susie.
do the same sort of thing, and I'm happy to step in and do that one
Fabulous.
as well. But I know that Tori at least has a good deal of graphics capability in what she does and may want to just do it.
She might, yeah, she would pull that off pretty easily, I think. Yeah,
Whatever
that
works
sounds
for you.
wonderful. I'd love to see an example. And is April 5th a Saturday?
It is.
Okay.
And so,
I just want to make, I need to clarify because that is roughly around the time of the Apple Blossom Parade. I think it's later in April, but I don't know what their schedule is going to be. So I'll try to get that date down. I mean, I don't want to, schedule two of those, two large events like that.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's April 26th.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Okay.
Great.
It's usually later, yeah.
then we should schedule a logistics discussion about this one for our February meeting, 2 months ahead.
Okay.
And I think when we have those flyers done, hopefully by that time, we can probably
Oh,
do
yeah.
them out
I
at the
mean,
same time.
we can jump right into that. I mean, I'm thinking we're going to get that done in the next week or two. I'm available whenever, and likewise.
Fantastic. Thank you. Well, I'll plan to come to the February meeting. And if there's other things that we need to be preparing ahead of time, Robert, maybe you could let us know.
So our February meeting would be what date? It would be the first Tuesday?
Second.
Second.
Yeah.
The
11th.
11th.
Thank you.
And the March meeting, also, of course, the
March
11th.
11th. Yep.
Cool.
Oh, well, I was just figuring that if we started on the logistics part 2 months ahead, that would give us enough time to figure out and then report back at the next meeting, which would be before the opening, get everything done. Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else on these topics? You both know how to reach me. All right. Send whatever that is to me too, if you would, Susie. Good. Budget.
I don't
Don't
have.
forget your
much of an update for the budget.
Oh,
It's
I'm sorry.
Oh.
Kendra, you guys, whatever the paperwork is so that they get paid, is that in train? So who will follow up, since Zuzi will be gone by the time you,
as long as she copies me on the email conversations, and we'll make sure.
okay, so
That
you're
gets
going to kind of
finished.
switch to John.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah. Thanks, Greg. Not much of an update as far as the budget stuff goes. I mean, mostly things have not changed. We haven't done any major projects. So I think the last time we spoke, and this was earlier this year, it was about $20,000, $23,000.
22 was your number.
Correct. So minus, I believe, the NEDCON was already kind of proposed into that budget, so that dollar value doesn't change there. And then the Bruce Johnson piece was already approved from previous budget cycles. So that is kind of roughly where you guys are still at. And that kind of plays into, the next item on the agenda for the storm drain, as far as how you guys want to handle the stipend, as you did for the sculpture garden. There was a stipend amount for those artists to do their work. I believe mostly it was just kind of transportation of the piece to the mounting. And then if there are any other logistics as far as, if there's a yearly renewal, or however you guys want to handle the storm drain part, or whatever the next art call is going forward. We do have the Barlow Hotel project that is coming in. That would be kind of the next project that would qualify for paying into the art fund. Currently, right now, there's no other larger kind of commercial projects in town, but things could change. So until that happens, we don't have much else, unless there is additional grant funding, or if Emmy can find money from other places, then that's kind of where we're at right now.
Emmy, to bring you up to date on that stuff, the NEDCON piece was a $40,000 commission. The Michael McGinnis piece on the library was a $30,000 commission. And there was some confusion about what our budget was. And so at the time, we were stretching our budget to offer $25,000 for the sculpture that the Bruce Johnson piece won, which happened to be what their price sheet for their dad's work was. So all that worked out. And of course, we have one more, the north end. And so our consideration is, with $22,000, do we prioritize a sculpture for the north entry to town at less than the other ones? Or do we wait until there's another project for that one and continue with our other changing projects? The sculpture walk, have you had a chance to go and see that?
Not yet, but if any of you wants to join me there, I'd love to go for a walk.
I will happily take you. It is next door to the Sebastopol Center for the Arts, which you also may not have seen, but a major asset of the city. Although the building, by the way, is a veterans building and is owned by the county and leased to the Art Center. So kind of the first consideration is, what do we want to do with the money relative to those two general concepts? Do we want to hoard the money until we have enough for the north sculpture, or assume that when the Hotel Barlow gets built, that with Kenyon's influence and Barney's past, we would get enough money from that to do the north entry, and that we could spend some of the $22,000 on changing sculptures of the sculpture walk, painting boxes or storm drains or whatever, on things where we'd give a stipend, but the artwork changes on some periodic basis, and we need to keep having money for stipends.
I don't know if John knows this, but the Barlow, I mean, the projects may be eligible, but they're also, it's up to them if they want to provide their own artwork, right, or give us the money. So I don't know if that's come up yet with that project, John, or?
It hasn't yet. I know as part of their initial request, they did request not to provide any funds into the public art in lieu fee. That is part of the project is proposing a development agreement. So there is kind of a negotiation factor as far as additional items for that. So that is kind of being discussed. Jane is still, I believe, working on that project for the city. And I don't know what the outcome of that will be. I mean, obviously we don't want to give, everything away, but, working through and seeing, but yes, Lars, you are correct. The option is to either provide on-site artwork or pay into the art in lieu fund fee. So I believe the Hotel Sebastopol did a mix, or
Well, they have a big NetCon piece as
Yeah,
part of their proposal, so I think they were just providing,
okay,
and we actually reviewed it, or didn't we review it?
you would review it, yeah.
We reviewed it before.
But
We reviewed it with DRB, of course, but I think it even came to to
But
us.
We didn't do any approvals, but they
We-
did discuss it with us.
there
Yeah.
still could be some funds from that project, because the cost of building the hotel now is more than it was when they,
I don't think you can ask them to revisit it. They've gotten all their approvals. They're not going to unapprove their project or
no,
pay.
that's not what I'm saying. Whatever they budgeted with Ned for the art, let us say it's a $5 million project and they budgeted $50,000 for Ned's commission. If it costs, in fact, $7 million to build, then there's an extra $20,000 over the commission that they gave Ned.
But they're not liable to give that to us.
No.
You're
but
saying we could ask them to give that to us?
Absolutely. Why would we not ask?
Because they'll say no. I mean,
they
that costs so much money already. They can't even build the damn
Well, they still
building
have-
because of how expensive it
I'm
is.
sorry, that if they have to spend $7 million, they have to use $70,000 for art.
Well, I don't know if that may be at the time of
Am I
permit
missing something here?
approval.
Isn't it based on what it costs to build, regardless of what they estimated it would cost at the time of permit?
It is a percentage of the valuation, but I don't believe that's likely when
Valuation is
the-
when they submit for
Correct.
the permit, they are required to value the project, and that's what the permit cost is based on.
yeah.
So if it costs twice as much when they start to build, that doesn't change
retroactively.
the
No.
permit application, I don't think.
Why
Correct.
wouldn't it change the valuation? Certainly the value of the building is what it costs to build it.
Yeah, but it's at the time
It's
of
at the time
permit
of
application.
when the application came in.
That's the way the ordinance reads?
Yes.
It's,
Foiled again.
Yeah. I guess that protects the owners, developers from fluctuations in the market that are out of their control.
Correct. It's similar to when building permit fees go up over time, especially for housing projects and impact fees. When the application is deemed complete, the fees that are in place at that time is what they're subject to paying. And obviously fees go up over time. Projects, aren't built the day after they're approved. So that is a protection that developers have so that they're not chasing
Okay.
incremental fees over time.
Well,
And then the point about that John was making about the Barlow is they're the development agreement. They're trying to come in. They're trying to save money on their permit fees, basically, which part of it is the art fee, right? So they're trying to say, can you please not let us pay that because it's already costing us X.
so who
right?
decides that?
Through the chair, I think the development agreement is something that's in negotiations, so we're not there yet. That said, there are different ways to approach these things. One is that the State Arts Council has different grants that may be available, and we'll have to take a look at that. The other thing is something that we did in Emeryville, and I've seen in the city of Napa and other places, is for their art programs, is that they would work with the developer to kind of have an economy of scale on their costs, meaning that, let's say that they need to do street furniture, nice benches and this sort of thing. They would then work with the arts community to maybe have it be something other than some generic bench off the shelf. For example, there's a really nice project, I don't know if you've seen it in the city of Napa, where after the 2014 earthquake, artists went and rescued these beautiful wrought iron bookshelf ends out of the public library and then took them and made them as part of benches, street benches, and that kind of thing. I've seen in Emeryville where they've the architecture for, say, a mixed-use building, which would have an eyebrow, that's like a filigree at the top, that they would make that an art piece. Or they might have a lighted entrance into a hotel, and they would do a light art program where there'd be some kind of light show, as it were, from different hours of the night. And so those are different creative ways where you can actually have the infrastructure that they're already having to build anyway be an art piece. And then that would be, like I said, an economy for their cost savings, but then also meet this agenda of creating or furthering the creative spirit that we have here in Sebastopol.
So I think what we really have to talk about is, with the money that we have and an unknown period of years before there's any more, what can we do with it that brings the most artistic vitality to the community? And I think that the stipend types of projects are probably overall better for that purpose than the North Entry sculpture, which we can address when there's actually a chunk of money that's enough to do it.
Yeah, that's kind of my feeling, that there's enough other things we are involved with that if we spend all our money for the fourth sculpture, then what will happen to those projects or the next small project that comes along?
Yeah, I was going to, just recommend to continue with this discussion on to, the next agenda, particularly because we have the next item.
Right, I was segueing into this.
Right. I got that feeling. And anyway, and also I was going to recommend that we revisit the North Entry. And then perhaps that'll be a little more become clearer to us, or we'll be able to enumerate that a little bit more so we'll have a better idea. And it might also behoove us to come up with just a rough budget ourselves, considering the stipends, considering the other pieces that might be ongoing in the city that are already in existence. You know what I mean? So,
well, let me fill you guys in on the storm drain artwork concept. So question one was, how many utility boxes do we have in the city? And of course, we know that there are 3 that we own and 2 that are paintable. And the other ones, and there was, 8 or 10 or something.
Roughly around there, yeah.
All belong to Caltrans. So I had a long conversation with Mike Kovanis at the city of Windsor. And Mike has spent, in his estimate, between 40 and 80 hours over the last 6 months negotiating with Caltrans, without a conclusion so far, to be able to paint those boxes. And since I don't think any one of us want to undertake that, And the council is certainly not going to approve those kind of hours for city staff to try and pursue that. The number of boxes that are Caltrans's in the city, I think, is a moot point. So what the city of Windsor is doing, this idea comes from them, is looking at painting storm drain covers. So I asked, did we get a map? There are 800 of them in our city. And so we're talking about the round concrete lids where there's, at the curb, where there's a storm drain opening in the curb right under it. And that's usually set in a rectangle or square of concrete, which is separate from the sidewalk. And so the concept would be to paint the horizontal upper surface, not the curb, and could potentially include the whole rectangle or just the circle. Some of them are iron, and those are textured in a way that they're probably not suitable, but I gather that most of them are in fact concrete and flat and paintable. And so I had a meeting with John and Eric to talk about what the city's considerations about this are. And Eric's only consideration was that there be a coat of paint in there which has texture in it so that the paint couldn't create a slippery surface.
Yeah.
And that could potentially be the bottom primer layer, and then you're painting over sand or something that's in that paint, and in the anti-graffiti coating over the top. What Windsor is doing is they're giving a stipend of $800. They have a lot more money than we do. And in 5 years, they're gonna give another $800 stipend to somebody else to paint over what you painted. So it's a 5-year contract.
That's what they're doing with the boxes. But you're saying
That's what they're
that's
doing with
also the
boxes
plan for the.
and- Right. So
So it's-
that's their theory on it.
Mhm.
So if we were going to do something like that, I'm thinking based on how much money we have and how many years it might need to last and so on, we might want to look at a stipend more like the same as we give for a sculpture in the sculpture walk. And that we would look at the most pedestrian traveled areas in the city and choose storm drain covers there, perhaps in sets of 2 or 3. We would talk about a theme and look for submissions, which would be drawings where somebody thinks that whatever it is they're drawing fits the theme. And we would need to decide, based on how fast we want to spend our money, how many storm drain covers we would like to do that way. So do we have that map to project?
No, we don't. Eric was not able to provide
Okay.
that. So
He's got a big printed one, but
Mhm.
he's not able to give it to us in digital form. But if we decide that we want to pursue this concept, and we might want to wait until we're a full 5 in order to commit ourselves to it. I wasn't suggesting that 3 of us, although we're a quorum, make that commitment today. But to give a consideration, I think it could be very fun.
Can I ask, is this a Robert Brett idea, or is this someone else coming up with this idea?
The
Or
lady who came here to
Yeah.
talk about the boxes suggested that I talk to Mike.
Right.
And so I went and looked at the tapes of their Public Arts Committee meetings. And in one of those tapes, their committee was talking about this concept of storm drain covers. So no, it's their idea that I'm suggesting we steal.
Right, but in terms of the city of Sebastopol, it's your idea, as opposed to someone in
Yes.
town has come forward with this idea.
Yes,
Okay,
I
correct.
am bringing this
Got
idea
it.
to us for
Okay.
this city, yes.
Right.
So I have a couple of questions just for my own clarification. So first of all, Public Works or the city has a plan a hard copy plan that shows the locations of all the.
Yes, there is a map that has those locations. And from what I wanted to clarify from Eric's perspective as well, that the roughly 800 is a large mixture of, smaller, 10 8-inch sewer drain covers. And, that's the whole inventory of the storm drain system. He was going to work on trying to get a more accurate count of the large ones that Robert is talking about. So we have an actual, maybe out of the 800, it's 150 or something like that, that are ones that are reasonable to be painted. And then based on the location of those in town, we would then,
Do you have access to that picture of one that you emailed to me?
that was just from Google Images.
Oh, okay.
Let me see if I can ask if Susie can bring something up, but
It's
yeah, it was
one
just
That was my second question, is just, I just need to see, because, there's the in gutter
Right.
drop inlet style, and then there's the whole concrete panel that essentially takes the width of the sidewalk. I've
Well,
seen
the example.
both extremes.
The example that John sent me, which is kind of what I've had in my head, is at the corner on the other side of the street from the northeast corner of the Rite Aid parking lot.
Okay.
So you know where Nature Lick is?
Yeah.
At that corner of 116, there's a bank there.
That's my bank.
Then
Yeah,
next time
there's
you
a little
go, it's-
Petriamio sculpture there.
Yes, there is.
right, and there's one of those concrete cover with a rectangle
Mm-hmm.
of concrete around it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the example of what I'm thinking we would look for.
Got it.
Okay, I'll take a notice of that then.
Well, my opinion of this as a project idea, and this actually relates to the utility boxes. Like, I'm a fan of infrastructure. I'm not necessarily one who thinks it's ugly and needs to be painted with flowers and hummingbirds. So I think, to me, it'd be more interesting
good
as a conceptual art piece by one artist, not by a hodgepodge of flowers and hummingbirds, which we'd get a lot of, I think, if we asked
It would be
our local artists to submit. Like, if you had, a bunch of these and you saw one was blue with pink dots, and you walk another few blocks down and there's a blue one with the opposite, or it's a different pattern or whatever. Like, it's one artist coming up with an idea. That, to me, is interesting. It calls attention to this is our infrastructure. Look at it. It's kind of cool. This is what keeps our city going. But if it's just if it's more decorative, it's just trying to cover up something that some people think is ugly, which I don't agree with.
And I don't think that they're ugly. I think that they're
I'm not
Some of the
suggesting you
people-
are. That was just my opinion.
right. I think they're just something that people generally don't notice, and that it's an opportunity to put art where people will notice it. And of course, we have a great deal of control if we decide to do this over. There's one. Over the theme, and artists could make multiple submissions all on a tied together theme, and we could say, we like all four of yours and we're going to put them near each other, and you can do those four, and it's $1,000, that kind of thing. Or, gee, we don't think that this meets the theme.
I think maybe another suggestion, if you had like 4 or 5 of them, and it kind of creates a pathway to some sort of, to Ives Park or to the sculpture garden, and then they're kind of somewhat themed in a way or noted in a way that's, that there's some sort of tour that they can walk through to get to a much more pronounced,
And in that shot, there seem to be 2 different things. What is the part with the 2, looks like metal hinges or stripes or something?
Can you zoom in again there?
Zoom back.
Those are bicycle racks.
No,
No,
in
to
the,
the left in
in
front
the,
of the
in the
little wall
pavement
there.
down, right there next
Go
to
back to
there.
that retaining wall,
Yeah.
Yeah,
right at
Go
the
to the
base
right.
of the retaining wall.
that thing
the
in the
right.
sidewalk with the two.
Oh, that might be a communication box.
Okay, and is that the city's?
Transformer
I-
vault.
Don't know for sure. It could be a PG&E or depending on what kind of
Yeah.
utilities are in there. The storm drain ones are definitely the cities.
Okay.
And we have a more accurate inventory of. I don't know what the utility box stuff, because sometimes that's, even though it's within the public right of way, it's typically a privately maintained.
Okay,
I think if we had a whole, the inventory, if there's a large, fairly large number of the same size, like there's those circles are interesting, right? And that's our project. We're not just trying to pick any random shape to paint. Like, just to me, it's the more like definition it has, the more effective it would be as an overall piece.
and looking at that spot, I would like to see the whole rectangle be part of what the artist could do rather than just the circle, but could be either way.
I have a couple of thoughts on it. I definitely like to see us continue this discussion so that we can all kind of reflect on the concept to begin with. One of the things I brought up in the past, and I think a number of us have shared this, is kind of from a conceptual and philosophical point of view. Sebastopol city limits, it's a small city. City limits are small. We already have a lot of things going on, different elements, different coloration. We talked about the signage needing to hopefully unify at some point in the future, et cetera. Anyway, so for me, and Lars pretty much alluded to this as well, uniformity would be really important in the small space. A thought that came to me was perhaps out of uniformity and simplicity and connection, each of the ones that would be chosen, each of the drains that would be chosen might have a different historical fact about the city.
That could be a theme.
Right. So anyway, I'm just throwing that idea out now, but definitely feel the need to reflect on it more so we can continue to formulate potential plan or proposal that would need to go to the city.
Well, let me offer a suggestion. We can have a subcommittee of 2 without violating the Brown Act. And so 2 of us could meet with Eric and the big paper map and get an idea of the realistic practicality of this, so that when we meet to discuss it again, we would have some, solid input from that. And I'm going to suggest you 2.
I'm not going to volunteer for such a committee. I don't have time.
Okay?
I mean, I would suggest we bring it back to the whole group, which is at least Barbara and hopefully one more. And maybe we could get the map, or we could get pictures of the map, or we could all go look at the map if it's available on Eric's wall, or whatever. Like we do sort of a round that's not subcommittee. We just talk about it once more as a whole board, and then we could form a subcommittee. I mean, a subcommittee makes sense for sure. I just can't do that right now anyway.
Well, I mean, Jeff and I can do it. This is more in your bailiwick, but I just think that since there's some big, some small, some metal, some concrete, some in neighborhoods where it wouldn't be appropriate, some in places where there's traffic, that if a couple of us sat down with Eric and the map and got an idea of, is there really something to do here that's worth discussing?
Mm-hmm.
Or actually isn't there? That would be good before the next committee discussion of it, which we could calendar to our January meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And if that doesn't seem inappropriate to you,
Yeah.
Jeff, are you up for that?
I'm up for it. I'm just mulling over, just other potential things to do too. Like for me, I think knowing where they are is important, definitely important for me. Also, I would prefer to take photographs of some of them, even chalk them off, because I'd really like to know what the perimeter of several of these really
Right.
looks like.
Well, that would probably be step 2 after we look at the map and have an idea of how much the city knows about what's where.
Yeah, I'm just thinking in terms of down, the next meeting or two where we have at least 4 members present to have images beyond what you shared with us, which is appreciated, would be helpful for our discussion,
Well,
other than just the map.
I understand. Do
But
you
I am
wanna-
willing to volunteer to look at the map.
And then we could, using what information we got, go out and take pictures and make notes on locations of the pictures.
Sounds good.
Does that work for you?
It works.
Okay, well then, I will start an email thread with you and Eric and the 2 of us about finding a time to do that. Okay?
Yeah.
You don't have to attend. I'm just including you.
Yeah, no, that would be great, just so I'm aware of what's going on. But yeah, I think Eric is probably the best point of contact for
Well,
those.
yes.
Yeah,
I mean, he's got the map
sure.
and knows what the symbols on it mean.
The-
There's
100%.
that too.
Yeah, there's that part of it
I
too.
know what those kind of maps look like.
Yeah,
And he
There's
he's a
circles,
fan. He's an
triangles,
art
squares.
fan too. This is our new public works guy, right? Like-
No, it's Eric Billings is our assistant superintendent who's been with the city.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. Right.
I don't believe the new person has started yet.
Okay. All right.
Anything more on this topic?
No, thanks for bringing it forward.
Who wants to talk about city signage and sculpture signage?
I do. Before we get to that, though, if I could just check in with John, just to kind of circle back with you and Brent Reed about the branch pruning.
Yeah.
You said that you would stay in contact with him, but I'm just wondering how, what kind of timing do you think this might result in?
As far as how long it would take if there was pruning requirements to do that, I don't know, but that is something that I can reach out to him, within this week or early next week and see, if we decided to go forward with the pruning around the sculpture. Is it something that the Laguna Foundation needs to initiate, or is it something that the Public Works Department can work with a contract arborist to do that work, or what the logistics of that is?
And
Yeah,
I'd
let them
also
know.
like to put out there, I would love to be there for that, to identify branches, if that's going to be a conversation that could be had.
Sure.
Maybe a couple of us.
Yeah, no, I can definitely include you in that conversation with Brent going forward.
Okay.
And
Jeff.
Gregory's been in touch with Brent and with Sanborn. So, this idea that Sanborn adopts the landscape just seems so great. And
Yeah,
right,
and that
so-
might be the easiest solution to take care of
Well, let their
everything. And,
arborists do it.
yeah.
and with Greg knowing, the timeline that we've already established here as far as when the opening will be and whatnot, will be helpful for if Sanborn is the one that adopts that landscape, then they have, an idea of when that stuff needs to be kind of taken care of.
And you good? With a brief apology, I have a circle back too. I forgot to mention when Kendra was here, and I'm embarrassed that I didn't tell her, but I will by email. I went yesterday to the board meeting of Sturgeon's Mill, and they approved the materials and probably building the bench that we want to go adjacent to the sculpture. The bench would have seat, arms, back, 6 feet long or so. And it would sit with its back to the fence on the south side and be chained to a bolt in that fence. And What they don't want to do is install it, and I said, put it in my truck and I'll take care of it. I would just put a couple of square cement tiles set in flush so that the legs are not sitting on dirt under each foot, and set the bench on it and secure it so it can't walk off easily. Obviously, with something like that, anybody with bolt cutters can carry it away if they're determined to, but we would have a nice bench there facing north where the sun is not in your eyes to contemplate the sculpture.
Do you have a picture of that bench, Robert?
Yeah,
That-
I do not.
Okay.
Can we get a picture?
Probably.
Okay.
I
I
will-
do want to share that with the parks, Sonoma County Parks, because that is their property.
Sure, it is.
And
I
I
mean,
think the
it's-
bench was talked about as far as the,
One of the
overall
guys
piece?
makes them for the mill to sell at
Okay.
each run day. They are gorgeous. It's made out of 3-inch thick redwood and is chunky.
okay.
So originally we had talked about putting the bench on the other side of the trail, right?
But when we
Looking
were
back.
doing the installation
Mhm.
and we stood over there, you
Hmm.
couldn't see the sculpture in the winter sun,
Because it was right in your face, kind
right
of.
in your face.
I would just, I appreciate all the homework and legwork you're doing on this, Robert, but I would like to discuss a little bit more as the committee, since this is part of the whole site and part of the scene. and
Actually, I
something we
deferred
discussed.
to the daughters on location of the bench, and we looked at the options, and against the fence is what they wanted to do.
Mhm.
And there is a flat spot there that's appropriate, and it makes it easier to secure the bench.
Wasn't
So
Tori also
This was not my decision, it was
right.
theirs.
And she was also planning to plant some stuff along that
Yes,
bench,
2
right?
toyon trees,
Mhm.
which would be to the east of, there is a tree there which is half dead, but Tori thinks is not dead.
Okay, salvageable.
And the bench would be between that tree and the sidewalk, and wouldn't be long enough to get to the, it'd be 3 feet back from the sidewalk to the west end of the bench.
Mhm.
And then east of the existing tree, they were going to plant a couple of toyons.
Right,
That was Tori's choice.
Mhm. Right, okay.
And you mentioned chaining it to the fence. Would that be necessary?
Well, I was going to talk to Eric about, their bench isn't something that everybody wants to steal. And it's heavy, it's on concrete, legs.
Mhm.
And by the way, I did discuss with Eric, that bench is currently facing the street because they just set it somewhere. And he's going to move it around so that it faces the sculpture from the
On the
north side of the trail,
Right,
but 15 or 20 feet back from the sidewalk.
nice.
So there will actually be 2 benches facing each other, one closer to the sculpture
Mhm.
and one further away
Across the path.
across the path.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
The other location that we looked at, which is, there's a tree that we had to prune that's right by the swale, but the dirt area there has a lot of taper.
Mhm.
It would be difficult to site it level,
Yeah.
and it had the sun problem because there was no tree shade to shade your eyes when you're sitting
Yeah.
on it in that location in the current, and we were there at noon. And in the winter, the sun is low enough that after we pruned that tree, the sun is under it, and it was like, oh God.
Yeah. That all sounds good. I think what Jeff is asking is the chain idea. Just will look kind of weird, right? Like,
Well-
is there any way to
Well,
secure
Well,
it?
you wouldn't really, I
into the-
mean, I put a hole in the back of the back leg,
Mhm.
which will be within 6 inches of the fence, and put a bolt in the fence and
Mhm.
attach them. And I was going to ask Eric, do they want a lock that they have the key to? Do they, how does the city do these things?
Yeah, right. Good question.
And the fence belongs to the auto.
The adjoining
lodge?
property owner, yeah.
It's sort of, I don't know if it's the same property as the auto body.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's just a weird
I
vacant lot.
it's no fence, and I was just going to put a bolt in the bottom board and
Mm-hmm. All right. That's great. It'll be nice to have that.
Thank you, Robert.
But when we meet with Eric, I will bring up that topic and ask him how the city likes to deal with stealable stuff.
Stealable stuff. Yes.
Okay, so we have 10 minutes left. Let's talk about signage.
So the signage is something really that staff needs to kind of chime in on, because this is a discussion we've had in the past. I'm not sure how apprised you are of this, John, because I know Carrie was involved with a lot of those discussions, and there was something about, I'm not sure if one of the other committees has also been looking at this. I think you mentioned that design review was, right?
Yeah.
And that there was potentially a signage code or signage language that was going to be developed. Can you fill us in on the status of that possibility?
I don't have any, I mean, we do have signage requirement or language in our sign ordinance that deals with like memorial signage or any of those types of things. And there's typically it's just a square footage of the sign itself. There's nothing particular to like the font of the text or the material that the sign is made out of per se. So that's kind of really it as far as the parameters of what that kind of signage would be allowed. I'd have to look further, and I don't think we have anything that relates to public art signage requirements within our code. As far as, you know, what if there's a larger allotment for square footage, or if it needs to be a certain font, that I'm almost positive the font component of it does not exist, but the overall, you know, if it's affixed to a wall, if it's a post signage, or if it's, you know, some are mounted in another way, or part of the art piece itself. So I know that as you mentioned with Lars, the design review board is looking at the sign ordinance as far as modifications and changes to what is allowed as far as our regular kind of private signage programs and stuff. And maybe there's a collaboration between these two committees as far as developing some public art signage, as we are, you know, trying to move that forward as a project. Because then at that time we can, you know, bring those two items together as a ordinance change.
Are you thinking particularly of the signage for the 3 entry sculptures?
Well, for me, it's kind of twofold. First of all, to set aside what the PAC's involved with art, I do feel like the signage for those art pieces should be pretty uniform in terms of the material, right, the font,
I agree.
et cetera. And then there's this other piece that sounds like the DRB and the city are gradually moving in on. And you said precisely what I've been really thinking, is that the collaboration piece.
Yeah.
Did you want to speak to that at all, or I don't know where that stood with the design review?
Well, with DRB, we just had one. We only spoke about it once. So I think 2 months ago, one of our members just made a proposal to revisit the ordinance, because in his mind, our current signage and the rules governing our current signage make for boring signs. You know, he put forward like the Pine Cone Diner sign. Now there's the golden era of signs, you know, and he even did some sketches of whimsical signage. And so that's kind of, you know, but compared to what's now allowed, it's, you know, this big and it's, you know, very discreet. And so that's sort of where this came from. I appreciate, Jeff, you had said, I think when we were looking at the various sites for the entry sculptures, just this clutter that we have in signage. Spooner Park, being the one we were looking at, like, we have a church, all the churches in town in one sign, and the nuclear free zone over there, or whatever. Just like, it's such a hodgepodge of signage that gets kind of, it's a lot of clutter. So I don't know if that, that means a more uniform sign code. That goes against the whimsical sign code, So yeah, we just had one round of discussion, and I don't, John, I don't know if you remember. I don't know that no action really came from that.
I believe there was, board member Dietler and then board member level
Subcommittee.
created a subcommittee to work together on that. And maybe that's, Jeff, if you're the most interested person on the PAC, is, maybe getting the three of you together as far as working towards a common goal of, overall signage, and moving that forward.
Yeah.
And that's a discussion that, because it is a subcommittee or an ad hoc committee of 2 members only on the DRB, and then if there's another person that wants to join you, Jeff, we can have a meeting with the 4 of us or 5 of us or whatever it may be, to kind of go over what our overall goal is.
Mm-hmm.
And set something up that works for everybody, so we can get a plan started, and then the 2 groups can work together. I mean, obviously the DRB's main focus is going to be the overall city ordinance signage modifications, and then for you and if anybody else wants to join you, yours is going to be kind of the public arts committee signage component, and then how we can marry those 2 together. But that's up to you if you want to embark on that.
Well, I'd appreciate it, anything to kind of keep the wheels moving on this as a potential project that might, come to be. And like Lars mentioned, just using Spooner Park as an example, I mean, it's not that some of the signage there is repulsive. It's just, there's just so much of it, and a lot of it's detached. And so if there was some way to make things, unify things, but at the same time come up with some minimum of uniformity so that people see these signs. Oh yeah, we're in Sebastopol still. Yeah.
I'm personally more concerned with the signs for the entry sculptures, which we should have when we have these 2 openings coming. And when I built the electronic sign for the Arts Center, I had all those parts fabricated by Reliable Hardware and Steel in Santa Rosa, and they were very easy to work with and relatively inexpensive for that. I did some online research about the kinds of signs that are a stake in the ground and a plate that tilts back from the vertical, and so you maybe are naming what kind of tree that is that it's in front of, or something in an arboretum, that kind of stuff. And I was not able to find something that seemed to suit, but if we had a brief discussion about how big we think uniform signs for those 4 sculptures would be, I would talk with the folks I know about fabricating them and come back to the next meeting with a budget for that. And my thought is that we would follow the theme of the 6-inch square ones that we've used in the community sculpture garden on each of those, but a bit bigger, maybe 12 inches square, with a stake, and that they can be bolted to, but have them made by whoever made the ones that we are currently using, and have those in place when we have the openings. Does anybody have any more thought about that? Would you like me to pursue that? Does the size sound appropriate?
There's none for the Michael McGinnis sculpture now?
There isn't.
No, okay.
but there is
There's look.
dirt below. it.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Sorry. Emily was mentioning, maybe since we don't have a parks department, maybe other cities have like park signage requirements and specifications that we can reach out to and see if there's kind of a uniform thing that I can at least share with the group, and you can either turn it down or we can use it as a starting point.
Well, I can go back to the guy in Windsor.
Okay.
He seemed like a good resource for all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and then I think the other thing too that I vaguely remember mentioning, but if it comes down to potentially reducing some of the cost on what's meant or what's on the sign, and then providing like a what are the screen things for your phone that you can
Yes,
the QR codes that would go to an art link piece or something
I
like
think
that
that's a great
gives a
idea.
better background on.
I mean, I'm sure that the method that they use for etching those plates can accommodate a QR
Sure.
code.
Yeah. And then, that could reduce the amount of, I don't know if it would be,
Right.
but if, rather than writing a long, full background on the art piece, you could do something a little bit smaller that, introduces it at least. And then if you want more information, you can go here, and then it could link to, and I know that we have that kind of start of the art kind of walk inventory of other pieces in town that, could link into the whole city as far as the other art pieces in town, the sculpture garden, and then some of the other.
Well, of course, we
Artsy
have a
things.
uniform theme for the sculpture garden, and those are 6 inches square.
Yeah.
I just thought that's a little understated for the scale of the entry sculptures.
Yeah, and to answer your question, Robert, sorry, I didn't
Yeah, no.
respond to that,
jump in.
but at face value, 12 inches just seems more proportionately correct. I
Yeah.
agree with you on that for the size of the pieces we're talking about. It just, without being out there and then visualizing the 12-inch there and how it might be. And I think in this case, it might be something that Greg/Ned and
Well, yeah. I mean,
Johnson family may want to
what
chime
we
in
would
on
do
too.
is
but-
dummy one up and mount it to foam core and make a fake and go out there and look at it.
Here's an 8.5-inch square.
Yeah,
That's,
well,
I
that's
think,
actually big enough.
I think 8 to 9 inches is probably fine.
Yeah, I think so.
But
Especially with a dedicated corner to a QR code or something like
Right.
that.
Yeah.
Okay, I will do more research both on having the bases fabricated and see whether the folks in Windsor have any idea where to find it. I did reach out to a woman I know who is the president of the ED of the nonprofit that runs the Arboretum in San Francisco.
mhm.
And she said, I don't know.
They just show up.
Well, they don't, they have those
They're
little
little,
ones.
right? Exactly.
They don't
Right.
have anything on that scale.
Mhm.
Through the chair, I just wanted to clarify, when we continue this item, that the different topics for the sign program, it sounds like there was some discussion about the interpretive signs. Those would be the ones that you would have for, say, an art walk. And then we have signage that might be on an art piece or next to an art piece, a larger art piece. You want maybe a more significant size gateway signs. That would be for an entrance area, that type of signage. And then the fourth sign type that I heard was, let's see, installation and tile signage. Oh, the A-board signs, those freestanding sandwich board signs and just general commercial signs where you want them maybe have more character. We actually had this conversation recently about the DRB review of the sign ordinance, that there's charming signs out there, remember from the 50s where they would have a coffee cup for a cafe and they would have a pair of shoes for a shoe repair salesperson, that sort of thing. That there are sign ordinances out there that actually kind of encourage those kind of signs, and also some language in the code that kind of encourages different size signs for the pedestrian scale versus the vehicular scale. And then an emphasis on less text as opposed to more. I don't know if sign vendors sign by the charge by the letter or what, but a lot of times you're driving by and there's so much text on the sign that you can't really read it. And so less is more in some of these instances. And so that those things that we can bring back and then do a little research on parks and maybe regional parks and that sort of thing. That, not that we're recommending those signs, but to show how they approach different scales and how they have maybe a signage program or specifications. You'd still have some latitude for the designs, but to kind of encourage maybe the same color palettes and that sort of thing for things that are identified with city projects.
Well, I think you're the driver on this.
Well, I think it's going to come to John's suggestion about meeting with the subcommittee from the DRB and perhaps some staff as well.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
I wanted to
absolutely.
share one more thought, though, and perhaps some others share this, but for years now, I've felt like having seen some really well done, high quality, welcome to Windsor, welcome to Healdsburg, et cetera, signage, that Sebastopol is much more deserving of the signage we have at the entrance to the city. So once the city does have a healthier budget and the signage discussion has developed, maybe that's a direction the city could go in.
Like Willits, right? Like a big archway. Welcome to the Sebastopol. Over the bridge. There's structure in place for that very sign at the bridge, actually.
Could be like Apple branch themed or something like that.
Yeah.
Gravenstein apples
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah, but at the Highway 12 bridge was rebuilt at the east end on either side. There's structure in place to have a gateway type thing there. Thanks, Jeff.
Next.
Site inventory is the next thing on our agenda.
Yeah, that was mine too.
Yeah, it is.
And I just felt like, and you've heard me talk about this before, that it would really be valuable for us to have a document that showed city land, regardless of the size, that the city has control over without no Caltrans or other agencies' influence. That's very simple and easy for us to read and refer to, so that into the future, when the PAC or whatever group in the city for that matter wants to find out, oh yeah, well, this is available, that would be a productive instrument to have. And I just felt like perhaps in the near future here, if we have some meetings, if we're skipping a month, for example, budgetarily or whatever, then that skipped month could be an opportunity for two of us to go out with the right paperwork and actually start identifying some of those places.
Is that a map that Eric would also have?
It actually already exists.
Okay.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, it's our GIS map. So
Yeah.
which is available publicly.
I've seen that, and it's helpful, and we appreciate you sharing that.
Mhm.
However, I see something simpler than that.
Okay.
Simpler than that just focuses on what we're discussing right now, because that has so many different layers on it, that piece.
Yeah. And it may be something, if I can reach out to our GIS folks to just pull that community facilities layer that just shows those locations and doesn't have all the clutter of all the other parcels within
That'd be
town.
great if they could make a PDF out of that.
The zoning map has the community facilities in
Teal.
lovely teal, yes. Mhm.
Yeah, so, yeah, thanks for pulling that up. Yeah, and if, yeah, like you suggested, that would really simplify it. And if it could be enlarged just around, along the primary roads, I think at this point is really what we're considering.
Mhm.
Yeah, so maybe there's less to do than I thought.
But that it could be what you're suggesting, Jeff, is it's like it's a resource we can always refer to. It's like part of our yearly packet or something, right? So we just can pull it out at any moment and say, this was the site for the next sculpture or whatever.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Perfect.
Anything else?
So where do we stand with that then, just to, before we kind of jump off this?
I will work with our GIS folks to see if it's possible to pull that CF, the community facilities layer, which is typically city-owned properties, and create a more legible map that the PAC can use for.
And is
future
that the
meetings.
only zoning that would apply?
Correct.
So, but in looking, I'm just zooming in on the area around Covert Lane and Mill Station when that we looked at this for our the last of the Gateway sculptures. There's no community facilities here, but there are sites that are city owned. Like even the median strip of Covert Lane we talked about as an interesting sculpture site.
Yeah.
So those are sort of in between, layers. Of
They're
city
they're
property.
like little strips of land that may not be identified on that map. And
Yeah.
I think, I've mentioned this, I know a couple of times, is that Covert Lane 116 nightmare of a intersection is identified in our general plan as a future either traffic signal or roundabout. Obviously, it is owned by Caltrans, unfortunately. But if there is the need to change that into a potential roundabout, and our piece in the middle of that roundabout could be a possible
Be a great
north entrance location.
Yeah,
I
sure.
love roundabouts.
Yeah,
Let me
we're-
say,
we're-
I
we're
love
all down with
roundabouts.
Well, and their roundabouts, as you probably know, is they're meant to have something in the middle so you cannot see across when
Correct.
you drive, right? You're meant to keep getting pushed to the right. So a public art piece right in the middle there would be not only interesting but important. Yeah, that's good.
And it is definitely a area, or the overall real estate of that intersection is large enough to handle a roundabout, because standard four-way intersection sometimes doesn't have the overall
Mhm.
radius for especially to get fire vehicle or emergency vehicles through those
Right.
roundabouts.
Just
Sometimes
as-
they have to be designed in a way that they can mount, the middle area for
Oh,
that.
that's true. Yeah.
Just as a curiosity, that little triangular island that's at that intersection, would Caltrans have a say over what?
Yes. Yeah, that section there is, I'm pretty sure, but if it's far enough on Covert, which I don't think it is, would potentially be the city's responsibility, but I'm not too sure.
I mean, I was just wondering if we had the money for a north entry and it was put there and then a roundabout goes in, then they
then
just
replaced.
take it out and
Yeah.
move it to the center of the roundabout when they're done.
Yeah. That could be a future possibility.
Mhm. There's a
We could
roundabout
move
under
next,
construction right now over on 12 and 121 or
121 and
116.
116/29 or whatever.
Long.
Yeah,
Well,
they're
four-
putting around.
It's actually you can now go roundabout. It's not
Oh,
done.
that was a horrible intersection.
That was like 30 years overdue, right? And
Yeah.
but it's working. I was just there this weekend. It's so amazing. Like finally.
Forward to it.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I just spent a month in Brittany and there are no signals. There are only rounders.
No, they're
Every-
rotaries though, aren't they?
Hmm?
Aren't they called rotaries over there?
I don't know. You mean Rotary?
No, that's a different
Oh.
country.
Um,
All
Okay.
right. Good.
Anything else we need to discuss?
John's report.
I don't have much other on the planning director's report, but Susie did let me know she's got something additional to add.
So I did manage to update the planning, the public arts page this past week, and I've been able to complete most of the updates, Jeff, that you requested.
Yeah.
There's a few, I think the community sculpture garden page still needs updates, and I'm hoping my replacement will be able to finish that. But
Okay.
most of the updates have been done.
All right, awesome.
That's
Thank you so much for making that effort, Susie, and we'll make sure whoever your replacement is, which really won't be a replacement, just somebody else assuming the same role, follows up on whatever's remaining.
So we have an applicant, you said, for the committee.
Correct.
So that process will sort of go and they'll interview with the council. or
Yes,
whatever?
I believe it is tentatively scheduled for the January 7th meeting for the interview and possible appointment. So because that meeting would be the week before your guys' meeting, hopefully, as long as everything stays on schedule, that person would, their first meeting would be the following week in
Great.
January, the
That'd
14th.
be great.
Fingers crossed.
Right.
Just to be certain, you folks are here for the next meeting or for the arts committee?
We assume we're here for the next meeting. I start at 8 o'clock.
Okay, just wanted to be sure. Okay,
Great.
then we're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Recording stopped.